What is going on, you guys? Petplatypus here, and it is time to review episodes 4 and 5 of Gurren Lagann. Starting off with episode 4, the 16 face. I don't know, this episode sucked. Bottom line is, this episode sucked. I don't even care what it was called. First 3 episodes I liked. As you guys know, you saw the review. Introduced some colorful characters, really good animation, interesting world building. It had stuff going for it. This episode, not so much. Fantastic animation, gone. Colorful characters, still there, but not really doing anything interesting. You introduce some new characters, they're not that interesting either. They could play a part later, so I'm not going to write them off completely. It's not like a filler episode or anything, but yeah, it does feel like this episode might take an episodic approach. The series might take an episodic approach, I should say, based on this episode and the previous episodes, but at the same time, there is some continuity carrying through them, so I don't know, I don't want to jump to conclusions or anything. It might be episodic, it might not be. Even if it is, if it's still really, really good, it doesn't really matter if it's episodic, so we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that's enough about that. As far as the animation goes, because I already said that's pretty bad, or I alluded to it being pretty bad. Yeah, it's pretty bad. And it's not even just, like, I could take bad animation. I'm not a huge stickler for that. I like Dragon Ball Super, for God's sake. But at the same time, the animation is very unappealing. It's very ugly animation. Like, Simone is off-model, and he doesn't look that good. And, like, Kamina's mouth animations, well, pretty much everyone's mouth animations just look really weird. And the way the teeth and lips are drawn, it just looks... I didn't like how the episode looked at all. It looked pretty cringy at times, and you could just tell they were either trying to fix their schedule, or they were strapped for money, because there's so many still shots where just the mouth moves. There's reused animation all over the place. Well, I don't want to say all over the place, but there's definitely a lot of noticeable reused animation. You've got this solid, like, minute of this dude and the other dude talking, Kamina and this blonde-haired dude, I forget his name. They're talking to each other and arguing and talking about food, and it's just clouds going by for like a minute to save on animation. So animation and art, very, very subpar. And the art in the series is nothing that great anyway, so for the art to be even worse in this episode is kind of like, wow. But, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too hard on it. I don't think I am, but because it's a seasonal series. But again, you know, stuff like Dragon Ball Super happens where there's really bad scheduling, and sometimes you gotta bring in a dude to do a solo episode, which actually happened fairly recently in Dragon Ball Super, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was a solo episode. Maybe there is a behind-the-scenes reason from back when this episode aired why it looks this way. But as it stands now, my first impressions of it, it looks pretty bad. And even bad Dragon Ball Super animation is still more appealing to look at from an art standpoint. Now, don't get crazy. I'm not saying, like, TV version of episode 5. That definitely looks worse than this, for sure. In fact, not all the animation in this episode is bad. I should make that clear. There are some moments that look pretty good, outside of the transformation combining thing that Gurren Lagann does, because obviously that's bank animation, which, if you don't know that term, it's basically just stock footage, reused transformations. That's fine. They can do that if they want. I don't care about that. But I'm not going to count it towards the animation of this episode, you know what I mean? So yeah. Not so good animation, not so interesting new characters, not an appealing episode really. Villains, like the little weird puffball dudes, weren't that interesting. Kamina wanting Simone to dock onto him and merge in a cool way. It's kind of funny, I like Kamina, but it's nothing, it's not that interesting of an episode, and on top of that, it doesn't look great at all, and I guess if any episode was going to look like this, I guess it would be good to make it a non-essential episode, but yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't a huge fan of it, to be honest. I haven't warmed up to the characters enough for them to pull through an episode that looks this bad, and, yeah, I don't know. But don't fucking grill me or anything if it's, like, your favorite episode or whatever the fuck. And if there are reasons why it looks this way, feel free to inform me in the comments section below. But, yeah, I just wasn't a huge fan. I give it, like, a 5.5 subpar episode, in my opinion. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it, to be honest. There's really nothing else. There's no lore, there's no extra world building, there's no real character development. It's just, it is an episode. That's pretty much it. So, with all that being said, let's move on to episode 5. Alright, so episode 5. Obviously, I'm recording this on a different day. Wanted this to not have bad lighting, this second half of the video, but, or I don't know if it'll be second half per se, but you know what I mean. The second portion of the video. But I'm recording it at night again, so hopefully the bad lighting will go away with future reviews. Hopefully I don't have to record them at night for any reason, but if I do apologize. But anyways, This episode, episode 5, much better than episode 4. Just start off with the technical aspects of the episode. Way better animation, way better art. Not that the previous episode set any kind of standard, but still, it was back on model and everything looked really nice. I figured episode 4 would be a one-time thing. Well, might not be one time, but we'll have to wait and see. And everything else in the episode, from a technical standpoint, was pretty good. Music, still not really standing out to me too much. We'll just have to wait and see. Like, it's fine in the moment, but nothing has really stood out to me at all. And, yeah, so music, fine. Pacing was a little slower than the other episodes, but not bad. Not as slow as episode 4. So pacing overall was fine, nothing too crazy. And the animation, while really good, was still nothing as phenomenal as some of the stuff we saw in the last couple episodes, again, outside of episode 4. So, overall, it was just sort of a fine, middle-of-the-road episode from an animation and art and just technical standpoint. But how's the actual contents of the episode? Well, I guess I'll address the elephant in the room, and that's the religious themes. I'll get to those. I'll cross that bridge when I come to them. Try not to... It's touchy, that's all I'm going to say, but, you know, just talking about that kind of thing. But anyways, as for the rest of the episode, before we get to that, because that's really the meat of the episode, before that, we get an interesting scene with the Steve Bloom character and Simone. He says that... was it the rocks, maybe, or something else nearby was new, or did he say old? I forget, I watched this yesterday, but something was new or old, and it was 400 to 500 years old or new. And I know that's not helpful at all, it's very confusing, but it was interesting. To say the least, it was interesting. And, yeah, not sure where that's going to go exactly, if that was important at all, or if that was just a little bit of information or world building or what that was, but... interesting. I want to say he said it was old. I want to say he said it was recent and that it was 500 to 400 years old, and that's considered recent, so that's interesting. At least I'm pretty sure that's what he said. But as far as the actual religious cult goes, I guess I'll get to that since that's the bulk of the episode, because that's really the only thing that happens on the surface. The only other thing that happens is, like, when they fall in, you have, like, a Kamina comedic scene with Yoko, because it's so transparent that she's starting to like him, and it's very cliche because they bicker a lot, but yeah, that's happening. We'll see where it goes, though. It could be handled well, for all I know. It's just starting, so who knows. But yeah, they fall in to the ground, and we see this very old gunman and this religious cult who worship it like a god, and then if, you know, the village population gets too high, then they send people to the celestial place, or whatever the fuck they call it. It's basically just the surface, and obviously they're probably going to die because the population can't exceed 50 because they're running out of resources. And it's interesting to see another village like Kamina and Simone's, but it's got like a totally different vibe to it because it has like the whole religious theme going on. And I like Kamina talking to the religious dude because it's just fun to watch him be an asshole to this guy. And the dude seems like a dick anyways, so you kind of like seeing Kamina do that, and he's a fun character anyways. You have this other character that gets focused on, which it was kind of weird that Kamina kept calling him Forehead Boy or whatever, because... I don't know, in a couple of shots his forehead looked pretty big, but I didn't think it was that over the top of a forehead, to be honest. You call him like Ponytail Boy or something, but I don't know, whatever, total nitpick. But yeah, it's cool seeing them interact with these people. They get some food, they meet these kids. The kids aren't really important that much to the episode overall, but since they go to the surface with the ponytail dude, they may come back into play later on in the story, so who knows? I really don't know. Like, I don't know how episodic this is going to be, how much this stuff is going to come back, so... I'm just guessing, but yeah, overall the episode's fun. It's interesting seeing how the religious stuff works and their interactions and the dude going over to the gunman and maybe having doubts of the whole thing, and then by the end of the episode they have the whole exchange where he's like, yeah, none of it's true, but keeping the people in the dark about it is better, and I gotta admit I do disagree with that. I do have to get a little touchy. I don't want to offend anybody, but I gotta be real with you guys. I'm not religious at all, and I do think having knowledge and knowing things is a very, very powerful tool. So I don't exactly agree with the ending of this episode or with the priest and all that stuff, but speaking objectively, it's fine the way it was handled. I don't know if we're ever going to see this town again, and it does make sense to want to keep the fucking population around 50 so that you don't fucking, you know, run out of food, so... I get it to a certain extent in this situation, but yeah, I don't exactly agree with it fully. But that's just my opinion. As far as the rest of the episode goes, there's some funny jokes here and there, and overall it's just sort of okay. There's a gunman fight at the end, and we see the old gunman get in on the action for a second, and yeah, it's really just another episode of the series. Very descriptive, I know. It was better than episode 4, though, and it was entertaining. I just don't really have too much to say because there's not a lot of story progression or character development so far. It's mostly just the main cast are kind of the observers, and everything around them is sort of like what they experience, but I'm sure they're going to get character development. It's just not happening yet. But it was a good episode. The animation was still, pretty good, and I'd say there was some more, like, smooth, really cool-looking moments in the first 3 episodes, but the animation here was still really good. In fact, since I watched it yesterday, I could be forgetting about some of the really cool moments. So, with that being said, I don't really have much else to say about this episode. I just think it's a good episode, like a 7.5, and, yeah, we'll see what happens with the kids and the other dude. They went to the surface. They might come back. They might die. Who knows? Communist dad died, so, whatever. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's the review. So, I'm just trying to think if there was anything else that happened. I will say it was funny that Yoko had to cover up, and then they still were able to pull some fan service out of her later on in the episode. But yeah, that's just a little observation. No, that's pretty much the episode. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, because I did watch it yesterday, so I really don't want to forget anything. But if I forgot anything from episode 5, you can go ahead and tell me in the comment section below. I thought the episode was fine overall. It's not bad at all. Don't twist it. It's not episode 4 or anything. That's definitely the only episode I would call subpar or bad out of the 5 that I've seen. So, with all that being said, what did you guys think of these 2 episodes of Gurren Lagann? You can go ahead and tell me in the comments section below. Also follow me on Instagram or add me on PSN. I'm petplatypus on both. You can also give this video a thumbs up and share it on social media. Both those would help me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't already, or if you like what you've seen here. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.